Hello and welcome to This Week Back in the Day. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the Ireland World Cup 2002 squad, which was selected by manager Mick McCarthy on the 7th of May 2002. I'm Dave, your host, joined by Nick and Martin. Lads, how are you doing? We have a six-baller this week. Martin and I were supposed to do this, but Nick sort of just forced his way in, anything to do with 2002. You just couldn't help yourself, Nick, could you?
I know. As people know, I have a serious horn for the 2002 World Cup. And we do check out our series from last year.
Yeah.
Like this.
GreenMachinePodcast.com. That's the GreenMachinePodcast.com. And you get this episode and all the other episodes in this series and any other series that we do. Right, that's the plug-in over there, lads. Should we get into it? Should we just lash into it?
Let's lash into it.
Let's lash into it. Right. So, bit of background here. You're probably listening to this going, oh, why do I want us to do a podcast about this squad? Well, we're going to go through in great detail. Mick picked a very different, well, not very, but a different squad than the one that would eventually go to the World Cup. Isn't that right, Martin? And setting the tone. And basically, we're going to go into that. We're going to go into Mick's reactions and questioning and his reasoning and that sort of stuff. We won't get into the changes on this episode. That will be for the next episode. So we're doing a sort of a two-parter in a way, or part 1A and part 1B. Anyway, right. So let's get into it, chaps. The Republic of Ireland qualified for World Cup 2002 in November 2001, a two-legged victory over Iran. Of course, the second leg was a 1-0 loss after winning 2-0 at home. Second leg, which Roy Keane didn't play in, Martin, did he?
No, he didn't. Obviously injured, as well documented.
He played in the follow-up game though for Man United that Saturday, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think he might have. You might be right there.
You did. Yeah. We do talk about this. It is available in the archive.
I think the job had been done though, hadn't it? From the home leg, I think was the kind
really,
of. And Roy was proved right that it was enough to qualify Ireland under his leadership for the World Cup. So well done, Roy.
Which he wouldn't go to. Spoiler alert. But there you go, just showing, and that's what we're about here on This Week Back in the Day. Bitter squabbling. No, we are about the facts. And yes, Roy Keane didn't play in the second leg. He was supposed to, then changed his mind, and he played for Manchester United a couple of days later. Just thought we'd say, get that bit in there. Anyway, on the 10th of Feb, Roy Keane got Player of the Year. Was he there for that one? Oh, never mind. Damien Duff got Young Player of the Year. Stephen Reid got the Under-21 Player of the Year. I'm still struggling to differentiate between the two. The very next day, Mick McCarthy gets a 2-year extension for all his good work, putting up a Roy Keane for 6 years. On the 13th of February, Ireland would beat Russia 2-0 in a friendly at Lansdowne Road. Russia would, of course, play Ireland later on that year in September. They were drawn together in the Euro 2004 qualifiers, which actually had Ireland as top seeds only for the second time in their history, by the way. And Andy Reid, Stephen Reid and Robbie Keane would get the goals there. And a little note from that, Dermot Gallagher, the Premier League referee, was actually the ref for that game. He was born in Ringsend, just around the corner. One of what accent he had on for that game. About a month later, on the 17th of March, Paddy's Day. Can we say Paddy's, lad? Or is that offensive? Paddy's Day. Is that offensive? Or
no point asking Martin, really.
Yeah, sorry.
Or me. You tell us, Dave. What do you think?
Well, I was told it was. So anyway, Paddy's Day. Mick McCarthy is the Grand Marshal for the parade of 2002. And then 10 days later, the Republic of Ireland battered Denmark 3-0. Ian Hart, Robbie Keane, and Clinton Morrison scoring the goals. That was actually my first game on Lansdowne Road. There you go. Oh. Yeah, I know, right?
Adorable.
I got the £2.
So you waited for Ireland to qualify for a tournament before you started going to games. Fair play.
Sunshine fan. There's no sunshine with Irish football. No, I just never could afford to go, and eventually got school tickets for, what was it, £2 or £4? I think it was. We got the schoolboy tickets. The South Stand, the wall thing. Schoolboy. For those people who grew up and were born in Ireland, Martin. Yes. And then on the 4th of April, unfortunately, Stephen Carr would be ruled out of the World Cup. Mick did save Stephen Carr, a massive blow, obviously, but he did actually rate Stephen Carr as the best fullback in Europe. So, lads, before we get to the actual little chat about that there. So, Irish football, Nick, I suppose, this is your golden era, I guess. Irish football is in a real, it's in a very healthy state, isn't it? The rebuilding job after Jack had gone in late 1995 is complete, isn't it, really?
Yeah, the cycle is through. And I mean, the fact that Stephen Carr was our best fullback, and the next fullbacks after that were Gary Kelly, who just played in the Champions League semi-final. And he's Steve Finnan as well, who was, I think it was that season he was named in the PFA A Team of the Year in the Premier League. So, I mean, we're very well stocked at fullback. And the likes of Stephen Carr showed how much depth we have because we were able to replace him. And it kind of shows that if we had Carr, if we had Roy Keane, the strength of that squad, and the amount of players playing in, we'll go through the squad in a few minutes, but the amount of players that were playing European football and the amount of players that were kind of competing for Premier League titles, it was an amazing time to be an Ireland fan. It was an amazing time. And you just kind of assumed that it would always be like that. So it shows that kind of 21 years later, how well blessed we were back then. And it's very hard looking back at it, to be honest.
Yeah. Martin, you, I suppose, were you supporting Ireland at this time?
Yeah, it was, of course. Obviously, 98, we were very close to qualifying for 98 World Cup. And this squad, again, I know we're going to come on to discuss them in a bit more detail, but just a mix of experience as well. You've got Niall Quinn coming, heyday of his career, basically, but, he's going to be in it. And he's doing really a good, fantastic job with Sunderland at the time as well. So, and yet you've still got a young Robbie Keane who's doing really well at Leeds at the time. Conley as well. We were in a really good place. I think even the threat up front, Morrison was.
Don't give it away, Martin.
No, I know, but I'm just saying the mix of it was good. Mick had done such a great job in really kind of harnessing his squad, and like Nick said there, we were able to cope with injuries and
so much depth
players as well.
So much depth. And and the thing with it was, I mean, as I said, we players competing for the Premier League, we players competing for European places, playing in European football, and then our championship players were probably the better championship players that were out there. And the amount of club captains in that squad, and the amount of club captains we had at the time was outrageous. So we were, as I said, looking back is so hard because we were just so well stocked with so much depth, and you kind of felt that if anyone was to drop out of that squad, even Roy Keane, that someone would step up and be able to replace them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll have to see what happens a couple of episodes down the road. No, I mean, yes, Mick had really carved a really good team here. I remember the World Cup 98 campaign, lots of mistakes made by the manager, lots of strange selections. And I think the Euro 2000 team, we should have been at that 13 seconds away from winning the group and, of course, going out on a playoff. And I just thought, this was a little bit overdue. I thought when you look at the names here, it's a very, very good team. And I remember I was delighted for Mick at the time. He'd finally done it. He had such bad luck in the last two campaigns, going out to a goal that was scored by a throw-in that should have been ours in Belgium. The whole thing in Bursa with Turkey and the way that went down, it was never right. It was just lovely to finally see Ireland do it. It was.
Tony Cascarino's still banned, actually.
He's still banned. I mean, if you're going to go out in the style of he did, I'm sure we're going to cover that on a podcast at some stage. But yeah, it was fantastic to see. Before we get to the squad, chaps, we're going to we had one last game before the squad was announced, one last opportunity for the Fringe players to prove themselves. Now, it came on the 16th of April, a 2-1 win over the USA. Mark Kinsley and Gary Doherty with the goals for Ireland. I remember that game, actually. Do you remember that, lads?
Yeah.
It was played in atrocious weather. It was more like a paddy field, is it? What did he call those? What did he call the right?
Well, no, that's offensive. But I remember before this game. I remember before this game the RT coverage, and I definitely remember Stephen Reid being one of the players. But they did a feature on kind of three kind of young players that have been brought into the squad, and I think one of them might have been Richie Sadlier. And they kind of, they
Yes.
had them basically doing keepy uppies and profiling each of them. And that's just what I remember from that one.
That's right. Yeah, I think that was his one and only appearance, wasn't it, Richie Sadler?
I think it was Russia, but I'm pretty sure he was in the squad then. Pretty sure he was in the squad for the USA. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Stephen Reid, he made his debut against Russia, I believe.
Yeah. Scored
He
as
did,
well.
didn't he?
Scored a screamer.
Well, he almost killed he almost killed the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
he hit it, didn't he? And it went under him because it was so powerful.
Could have done with him in Ukraine.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
It's a war reference. We need to be a war reference.
Yeah, actually, that's my.
That was
gimmick,
for you,
Nick.
Dave.
That's my gimmick. Get your own. War
All
is
for
my
your
gimmick.
benefit.
Yeah. Oh God. Right. So we'll get into the actual squad, which was announced on the 7th of May 2002. Brace yourselves, chaps. Right. So in goal, we've got Shay Given, who was at Newcastle, Alan Kelly, Blackburn, who did play in some of the early qualifying games, Portugal and Holland. And actually, Shay Given was superb in Iran. And never mind Roy Keane. If it wasn't for Shay Given, Ireland would not have qualified for the World Cup.
Agreed, yeah. The one-on-one with Karimi.
Yep, at home and away. He made a couple of great saves.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, just thought I'd, say that, Martin. And then, of course, you had Dean Kiley at Charlton. 3 quality goalkeepers, by the way.
3 Premier League goalkeepers.
Yep, really good. And
Kelly wasn't really playing, but still, yeah.
No, he wasn't. There was actually talk at the time that he was going to go to Man United. Do you remember?
Yeah, the year before, I think, yeah. And they went for Andy Gorham.
Andy Gorham, yeah, bless him. May he rest in peace. The Rangers goalkeeper who had his own battles. You know, they used to have a chant for Andy Gorham. There's only 2 Andy Gorhams.
Yeah.
They actually did.
Jesus. Not a friend of Roy.
Yeah, that's right. When he was there, Alan Kelly, such... Whatever you think of Alan Kelly in the later part of his career, he was a fantastic goalkeeper. So in defence, we have Steve Staunton at Aston Villa, Ian Hart at Leeds, Richard Dunn at Man City, Gary Breen at Coventry, Gary Kelly at Leeds, of course. Steve Fenn was still at Fulham, just broken into the Premier League. Kenny Cunningham was at Wimbledon, remember them. Andy O'Brien at Newcastle. So in midfield, you had Mark Kinsella at Charlton, Roy Keane at Man United, Lee Carsley at Everton, Jason McAteer, Sunderland, Matt Holland at Ipswich, Kevin Gilban at Sunderland, Mark Kennedy of Wolves. And that's it. That's who we have in midfield. Now, you're probably hearing some of those names going, hold on. But remember, folks, this is the original squad. And then up front, we have Niall Quinn of Sunderland, Robbie Keane at Leeds, David Connolly of Wimbledon, and Crystal Palace's very own Clinton Morrison.
And Damien Duff.
And Damien Duff, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Damien Duff. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I do actually have him on the list. I just missed it. So there you go. Damien Duff of Blackburn Rovers. Very young squad. I think it was one of our youngest. Had an average age of 26. Obviously, Steve Staunton and Niall Quinn bringing that down. Niall Quinn was about 50. And Steve Staunton, I think it was 34, but he played like a 45-year-old. He was terrible. I'm sorry. He's a dreadful centre-back. Loved him as a wing-back and a midfielder, but he was a terrible centre-back. Just saying.
Yeah, the more pace he lost, the more infield he went. I think it's worth noting there, lads, that there were so many club captains in the squad. I mean, Steve Staunton with Villa, and then Roy Keane naturally with Man United, Mark Kinsella with Charlton, Matt Holland with Ipswich, and then so many lads who'd actually captained their clubs kind of in the last couple of years. So, I mean, you would have had Gary Breen had captained Coventry at times, Gary Kelly with Leeds. I know Steve Finnan had captained Fulham a few times in that season, Kenny Cunningham with Wimbledon, and Damien Duff, I'm pretty sure, captained Blackburn in Division 1 a few times, and Niall Quinn with Sunderland. So there were a lot of lads there, as I said, even if they weren't club captains, they had captained their clubs during stages. I think Dean Kiley had captained Charlton sometimes, when Mark Kinsella was injured. So definitely worth noting. Alan Kelly as well. I'm pretty sure he captained Blackburn now and again. So many leaders in that team and so many lads who were so trusted and young captains as well. It's mad, Martin, isn't it, when you look at that squad? That was considered our weakest squad at the time.
Yeah.
Like going into a World Cup.
To qualify for a major competition, yeah. And it would have been because the Euro 88 squad was, in my opinion, our strongest. players like Ronnie, world-class players. Like, it wasn't just one or two world-class. It was a team of world-class players. Italy 90 as well. And then the USA 94 team, just a little bit past it, but still, Roy Keane, Irwin, Houghton, Paul McGrath, players like that. But this is still a fantastic side, a very young team as well, obviously, with an average age of 26. Just looking at the press reaction, pretty much the mantra from the press was, no real surprises. There's only no real shocks. There was apparently only 5 phone calls made by Mick, allegedly. And they were made to Stephen Reid, Gary Doherty, Colin Healy, Nicky Colgan, and Rory Delap. Rory Delap I think he last featured in a competitive game against Turkey in a playoff. He actually played quite well, the one at home in 99. And obviously, Nicky Colgan was just very unlucky there. But especially Reid, Doherty, and Healy, those guys were had just emerged that particular year, 2002, and they were on the cusp of the squad. So he was also just going to put the comparisons, lads. What I'll do is, what the press determined was the comparison, who somebody is in instead of whoever, and the question that's asked of Mick and Mick's response to it, and then we'll discuss each one. We'll just break it down like that. So, Mark Kennedy or Stephen Reid? And he was asked by the press, Mick, if Stephen Reid is the most disappointed to miss out. His response was, you'll have to ask him. They're all disappointed. They all wanted to go. They all got an opportunity right at the very end. 1 or 2 of those might get an opportunity. I hope for the sake of the players who've been picked, that's not the case. He means from injury and that kind of stuff. But if it is, I'd be delighted to have any of those lads left out involved. So it was either going to be Mark Kennedy or Stephen Reid. I'm going to just set the tone here. I think it was outrageous that Mark Kennedy got the nod over Stephen Reid.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there that myth that Mark Kennedy was Mick McCarthy's babysitter?
Yeah. Mark Kennedy's only contribution in an iron shirt up to that point was that goal against Yugoslavia 3 years previously in June 99 when he scored a screamer. That was it. And after that,
he was a good player.
He was, but he wasn't in 2002. And also, him and Phil Babb got arrested. The Starsky and Hutch incident. A few days before they set out in 2000 for the Holland game. Yeah, Stephen Reid had come in that year, scored on his debut, actually looked like a missing part of the puzzle. And this is what annoys me about Mick McCarthy. I love Mick, but I think this kind of lets him down. This is why he never became that elite manager. And correct me if I'm wrong, lads. That elite manager where Jack was like with the World Cup 94 squad, Gary Kelly, Phil Babb, and Jason McAteer came in. They didn't play a single qualifier. But he looked at them in those warm-up games, which actually one of them was against Russia, funnily enough, in 94, and went, oh, do you know what? You give me something a bit different here. And he brought him with him. And Mick just couldn't do the same. He was all about loyalty. Mark, what do you think of that? I mean, very quiet on this. Steve Mark Kennedy?
I think Mick was incredibly loyal, and that's how he's
too loyal.
And yeah, I would agree with you really with Reid and Kennedy. The comparison there. I mean, Reid, as you said, there was under 21 player of the year. He's come on, had his opportunity, scored. I remember the hype all being about him at that time as well. So I think it could have been accommodated in the squad instead of Kennedy. Definitely, when you compare what they've done or what they had done in recent times, I think it's a clear one for me. But yeah, it just does come back to Mick being incredibly loyal and Mick's familiarity with those players who had got him there in a sense. Kennedy probably a little bit different because of obviously the relationship from back with the Millwall days and stuff, but or Wolves days was it? I just think I think Reid should have gone instead of him.
I think Mark, and don't want to sound cruel to Mark Kennedy, but Mark Kennedy had his chance and he blew it. Mark Kennedy was all talk when he was at Liverpool in the 90s, 95. People forget that Mark Kennedy played for Jack. Mm-hmm. People forget that in the Euro 96 campaign in 95.
Did Stephen Reid play for Mick at Millwall?
I don't think so, no, because
he might have been too young at that stage. Geez, he only would have been 14 or something when Mick left. So no.
No, but But to be fair, Mark Kennedy played for Jack Charlton 7 years previously, and he was all the talk of the town. Went to Liverpool, didn't work out for him for various reasons. Yeah, but I think that's a theme there with Mick. Too loyal. You got to be ruthless, and I think that's what he was missing from being a tippy top manager. And from a discussion off.
Can I ask something? And I don't want to. Look, we all know Stephen Reid went, but Stephen Reid featured a good bit in the World Cup. Would Mark Kennedy have played at all? Because Reid was excellent. Like Reid kind of filled a number of positions, didn't he? He was kind of a winger at the time, or a right midfielder. I wouldn't even call him a winger, right midfielder. He kind of transitioned into a central midfielder as his career went on, but he could cover the fullback positions. And he came on against Cameroon, nearly scored from a free kick.
He wouldn't have played because he only came on, and actually we're getting into another podcast, but the only reason why he played was because McAteer got injured in the midfield. That's the only reason why he played. Because and we'll talk about that at a later date. But yeah, that's the problem. It's a bit like Kennedy. I don't think would have played. I think it's a case of, do you know what? You were with me from the beginning. Let's go on this trip together. But I don't think he would have played. That's my opinion. It's an excellent question, and that's my answer to that. I don't think he would have played. Right, the next one. Gary Doherty, or Andy O'Brien, is what Mick had to say about it. He's had, Doherty, a broken leg. He just come back from it. I don't think he's fully fit to go to the World Cup. I really don't.
No brainer that.
Well, yeah, he'd broken his leg in September, so he wasn't there for the rest of the actual qualifying campaign, which the November game and things. So yeah, he was just coming back. He did get an opportunity though. He came back into the squad, didn't he? But just he had to make a choice, and you can't take a risk, I don't think, with that. And although you've mentioned the defenders and stuff, I know we had a good mix of experience. Staunton, Richard Dunn was very young at the time as well, though. But it kind of picked itself to the centre back positions. So I think it was more sensible for O'Brien coming in there. I think Gary Doherty had been more fitter. He probably would have gone because he was a bit more versatile than Andy O'Brien. Could have been up front, didn't he, or at the back. So
role.
Yeah, it was just a shame for him, really.
And he was effective, wasn't he, Doherty? Under Brian Kerr. But I think with O'Brien, look, after coming off a season playing in Europe, he was a really young, up and coming defender. He nearly played for England, and we managed to get him. So I think, versatility wise, Doherty might have given a decent option. But when they had Noel Quinn there was no reason. I mean, O'Brien never played, but I think that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, he was literally just he was covered. Both what he offered was covered by two different players who were probably just that little bit better at it. Next one, Lee Carsley or Colin Healy. He's done very well, Mick says about Colin, but I looked at it and thought, is leaving out a player who's gone through everything with me, been loyal to me. Here's that word again. Turned up, given his lot, been a terrific squad player, is leaving one of those lads out and bringing somebody else in going to give me a better chance of qualifying for the next round and progressing further. I didn't think it would. Colin has done well in 2.5 friendlies. He was excellent in those games, but I think they're different to the big World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I think it comes down to experience there. He's going to trust Carsley more than Colin Healy, who's potentially going to be better for the future. And, as you said, he's a leader of his team. Very good player, Lee Carsley. You know what you're going to get there if Keane's out, Cancella's out, or Holland's out. So you could bring him in there for that. And probably was a bit of a safer option more than Healy. So I can understand it. But again, he's shown his hand there, though, isn't he? Again, like it's that loyalty word. That's what he was. He, even when he was looking at the squad, he said the people who come off the pitch in Tehran, there's going to be very little changes to that because, again, he's rewarding loyalty. And it must be very difficult as a manager to think not to do that because that's the aim, wasn't it? To qualify for the World Cup. And, if there'd been 2 or 3 players missing from Tehran, and I know Roy Keane wasn't there, but Roy Keane was definitely going to go if he was fit, wasn't he, for the World Cup? But if he had these injuries going into the Tehran game or the playoff, he had 3 or 4 missing then he's got a question mark out. 3 or 4 of them are coming back in. And you can say, well, they were missing for Tehran, but they were my starters. Whereas he didn't really have that situation.
Well, he kind of did with Roy Keane, but it was just too late.
But Roy's the captain of the team, though, wasn't he? And you've gone undefeated through a qualifying campaign, through the qualifiers, not obviously the playoff game. They lost it, but But all the other ones, you are rewarding loyalty, you're rewarding it. So that's what he's got to do.
Before I get to that, I'm going to read the next comment from Mick because, they're the three players. Loyalty is important. I was playing in the Millwall reserves and I think I'd only 10 games when I went to the World Cup in 1990. But I was picked by Jack because of my performances for Ireland as much as anything. I think he showed loyalty, or I think the loyalty he showed the players was repaid in spades, and it has been for me. See, I have a problem with that because I don't think there is loyalty in football. I don't. When a player's doing really well for you, you stick by him. A la Roy Keane. When he was doing the business for Fergie and he was being a bowsy and he was getting arrested and he was doing this, he was doing that, Fergie stuck by him. The second when he wasn't doing the business for him, he got rid of him just like that. Just like that. And I think that's what top managers do. And it's ruthless. And there's probably some people listening to that, shouting at the podcast. But I just think the top managers know when to cut their losses. It's like Paul McGrath with Jack Charlton. If Paul wasn't doing the business for Jack, right, and he always did the business for Jack, there's no way Paul would have been in that squad. Jack would have cut his losses with Paul.
Yeah, and we saw this. We saw this when Mick came back as well. But I mean, the thing is, the only loyal selection I would have seen there. I mean, Stan. You could argue that maybe Kenny Cunningham should have started those games, but I mean, Stan was the captain when Roy left, and if Roy stayed, you question whether or not he would have started those games. But the other strange one was John O'Shea. I mean, John O'Shea was very, very raw. I think he was only about 21 at this stage, and played a couple of friendlies. Point. Yeah,
excellent point.
He made a couple of mistakes. My first Ireland game was Ireland-Croatia, the 2-2.
Yeah.
And John O'Shea, I think he handled. Pretty sure it was a handball. Gave away a penalty. We were 2-0 up, and then they came back. Yeah, it came back and they drew 2-2. So there was that aspect as well. But yeah, the loyalty side, the only two really glaring bits of loyalty I saw was Stan starting as centre half. But again, I think that was more the fact he was captain after Keane, and Kevin Kilban, because I thought Kevin Kilban was pretty poor in that World Cup, and maybe that's why Mark Kennedy was brought as a left footer. I mean, Duffer was kind of seen as a striker, wasn't he? So apart from that, I think it was looking at the squad now, it's a bit depressing, isn't it? But it was an excellent squad, squad.
The thing is with Mick though, and we do love Mick, but he kept playing Duff up front. Why? The game against Denmark where we battered them 3-0, Duff played on the wing with Morrison and Keane up front.
Do you know where it came from though? Do you know where that kind of idea came from to play?
You've told this story before, but tell it again.
Well, I tell it again. So, in the lead up to the Holland game at home in Dublin, Mick McCarthy was reading Jaap Stam's book, and Jaap Stam said, a lot of modern day managers will play a little and a large, so a big striker and a little striker, and I suppose at the time, I think he referenced the success of Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips at Sunderland. Mm. And he said, but the thing I hate is playing against a little player. So he said, it's harder to play against a little and little than a little and large. And if you look at Robbie Keane, if you look at Damien Duff, I think the two of them are maybe 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah.
And it didn't actually work against the Dutch, didn't it? No, I mean, we got the result in the end, but that was only because I think, didn't Robbie get whipped off?
Yep.
When Gary Kelly got sent off. So he kind of had that. Now, Duffer had a free role. I don't think he was really a striker. He went wide. He had a kind of free role where he'd dip into the wide positions. He was allowed to cut in, or he was allowed to go more direct. But I suppose that was one of Mick's calls that he would probably claim brought a lot of success.
Yeah, I just think though with Mick, and this loyalty thing again with playing Kilban on the left and playing Duff up front, I think you're just negating that left side. You got one of the best upcoming left wingers in the world with Damien Duff. And for 3 seasons at Chelsea, 3 or 4 seasons, he was world class. Him and Robin.
Yeah. Now having said that, sorry, Dave, sorry to interrupt you, but having said that, I think Duff did fine in that position, that free role. Not as a striker, but I mean, if you look at Spain, he was cutting in off the right. He was playing centrally.
Yeah, but he
wasn't a striker.
He went on the wing when David Connolly came on.
Yeah, he wasn't a striker. I don't think he plays a striker though. I think it was more of a free role.
Yeah, it was him behind Robbie. Sorry, Martin, you want to come in there?
No, I was just going to say, this just undermines the person that Mick is, though. It's just incredibly loyal. And it's not cliche to say that. Anything you hear of anyone who's ever played under Mick, they just love his honesty, and that, you know, he can make tough decisions. He will drop people, he will release people from contracts, or tell them, look, you're not for me. And anyone who has ever played for him respects him massively, and that just shows that, you know, even the fact he's rewarded his mates, basically, you know, like Quinny's gone there, Staunton's gone there, all Alan Kelly to some respects as well, you know, would have played with him in a lot of squads over the years. So you've got to understand he was trusting the kind of age profile to get the balance right of having some up and coming world stars to be in Robbie Keane and Duffer, and even Clinton Morrison was really highly rated at the time. You know, we've got some really good players coming through, but he did have the old hand and experience of Staunton, Kelly, and Quinn.
Yeah,
and that's just Mick, that he's incredibly loyal, and he's probably not giving out the full facts there as well, though, to the press and of everything and what's going on behind the scenes. And I think he's just justifying that he did give more chances. I think that was fair enough.
Yeah, I think on that, and I meant to actually comment, just going back on the Carsley-Healy thing, I would have gone with Healy, personally. Carsley had it, yet again, another player had his time. And when Carsley came back into the Irish team under care, he got lambasted. He got absolutely battered. Do you remember he was actually exiled, I think, after the Euro 2004 campaign, where Colin Healy, you know, was an up-and-coming player. I think I like when a manager's brave and bold. And I think when Mick was brave and bold with young players, i.e. giving Robbie Keane a chance, he was always rewarded. I think most managers are rewarded when you give youth a chance. And I like that. And we've spoken about it through the years with different Ireland managers. But I just thought with Carsley, like, you've had your time. And it's the same with Kennedy. You've had your time. It's time for the next generation to come through.
Colin Healy was really consistent. Like, I mean, he played. I don't remember the couple of games he played, but I remember we played Finland after the World Cup, and he scored a goal and he was excellent. I think a lot of people thought he'd be a starter. They actually thought he'd step in for Roy Keane, because he kind of played a bit for Coventry, didn't he? Played a bit for Coventry on loan. And, you know, he was with Celtic. It didn't really work out for him at Celtic for whatever reasons. But, you know, Colin Healy is always a player that I look at with a bit of disappointment, because I think he could have come into that World Cup squad and maybe featured if those FIFA rules didn't stand. So he's one I look at with a bit of regret. He should have won a lot more Ireland caps. And
of course, those listening home will remember that poor Colin Healy broke his leg. For Sunderland, had a very bad leg break. And then when he was coming back, Mick, his manager at Sunderland, broke his other leg in a training game. So the rains of poor old Colin. Listen, lads, we're going to leave it there. We are going to cover, the next episode will be the Niall Quinn testimonial, which is like a companion episode to this. And the final squad will be revealed for issues that occurred in that game and after that game. So it's all to play for in the ready money round. Isn't that right, Martin?
Yeah, looking forward to that, because it is fascinating, and the fallout basically of interviews and speculation, and yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, so don't forget to tune in for that one, which will be available the following Wednesday. Anyway, we're going to leave it there, chaps. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast, as you always do. If you want to support us a little bit more, do go over to our shop. That is thegreenmachinepodcast.com/shop. Give us money, please. Please support the podcast. Buy a shirt, buy a badge, something. Just buy something. Give us money. We're desperate, lads. But and also, if you pop over to greenmachinepodcast.com, we have tons of articles. We have loads of episodes. We have every episode of This Week Back in the Day and all of our other bits and pieces over there. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and hit us a subscribe, please, on the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you on the next one.